Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Friday or happy Saturday, wherever it is you are in the world. This is USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show today is the Listening Mentor. Our topic is all the world is a stage. What does this even mean? I don't know. I just come up with the topics. I'm just here to ask the questions. So joining us is the star of our show. She is an expert. Her name is Jacalyn Heward, and she is the Harley Street stress expert, joining us from London in the UK. Welcome.
Woohoo!
Woo-hoo. How are you today? That's a loaded question, by the way. You don't have to answer it. So, we were talking backstage. There's a number of things in life that are minor things. And then there's some things that we do in our life that are major. They have major impacts. One of which is something you're going through. You are in the process of moving. And as you know better than anyone, it hasn't been that smooth. And that's part of what our topic is today. All the world is a stage, meaning people are always watching us. People are always observing us. They're listening to us, maybe not with both ears, but they're looking and saying, what's going on? People are looking right now going, she looks pretty calm. She's it all together. She's a professional, educated, former corporate entrepreneur. What do you have to say to them about all the world is a stage, Jacalyn?
Well, we're living in today's times, and we're all living in strange times, and we're handling things that come up. So we're all having to deal with things that normal everyday life we have to handle. And one of mine is to literally sell my home and buy a new home in a different location in the UK. And things happen, as you said, Dr. Jacalyn. And it's, how do we respond? How do we react? Because the world is a stage, and essentially we can either throw our toys out the pram, get very cross, very angry, or we can set about getting into action, communicating. This is what this show is all about: communicating and listening to what's going on, and acting and communicating from what is wrong. It's very difficult to be able to handle something that's wrong if the person doesn't tell you, if you don't know. And so this is where we are in our everyday life, in all sorts of aspects of our life, that people don't tell you everything. And so you think everything's right, and you think everything's going ahead and it's all smooth. And then just at the point that you're about to sign a contract or sign the deal, or just at the point when you think everything is okay, then something gets flushed out. And such a thing has happened to me. There's been 3 things today at the point of me thinking that I'm going to exchange today that have come out of the woodwork. And it's because we don't know what we don't know. And if we believe we know everything, sometimes some people forget to tell you, they don't tell you, or more to the point, they probably don't think it's urgent and important. And it is about what I've actually done this afternoon, is spoken to some people, explained what's been happening, why we're where we are, and why I can't pay my removal company today. And he said, that's okay, I'm with you. He said, we will hold for you. I said, on Monday morning. And that is communication. And that is because we're being the best that we can be to each other. Whereas he could have thrown his toys out the pram and said, do you know what? That doesn't give us any notice. You're lost. I'm going to go with somebody else because I can't trust you. But what I've done is I've developed a communication and a relationship of trust. And that's how things work. It's on trust and on knowing that something is going to happen and things are beyond your control that you're handling and dealing with. And the world is a stage where all on show and everybody can see everything. So how do you respond when the chip hits the fan, when the hits the fan? How do we cope? And my coping mechanism is to get everybody involved. So there's been lots of phone calls, lots of emails between the solicitors and the different people that are associated with this problem. And by the end of the day, just before closure, just before 5 o'clock, those things that were wrong were put into place. But because of the legal system, we couldn't do anything until Monday morning. But what I will say is it's all about communication, trust, and getting everybody on board for an end result.
Caroline, thank you for sharing part of your story with us. And there's so many aspects of what you just shared that I want to tap into. The first was when you started talking about maybe people are not telling us everything. Sometimes people tell us some of the story, but not all of the story. And if we had those other details, it would have made a big difference. And when we think about throwing our toys, where did you say, on the pram?
Out the pram.
Out the pram. Is that out the window? Is that like...
This is a Britishism by the sounds of it. I realised as soon as I'd said it, that it might not be an understood term. When a baby throws its toys out the pram, it means I don't like that, I don't want it. And so it's an act of defiance, because the baby can't communicate their emotions, but they can show you. So what they do.
Crib.
Well, the pram is where you're mobile. So in the UK, we have something that's mobile, where you're taking the child, the baby, you're pushing them outside. So the crib is where they sleep.
The stroller.
Yeah.
Welcome to our vocabulary show. So fantastic. I love it. So let's just look at it this way. A couple of things. First of all, you described some very stressful situations, all of which you handled with class and dignity, the way that you would want to be treated by someone else. And as a result, the feedback that you were getting, the behavior from the other entities, it was such that they were treating you with respect. And I think that is such a valid point. When we start talking to each other like we have no respect and no regard for the other person, what do we expect to get back, if not that escalated at a much higher level? And I think another thing, which I'd love to have you weigh in on, is many times our demeanor and our persona for the outside world is very different than it is for the one that we have at home. And there's an old saying, you always hurt the ones you love. So can you tell us a little bit more about this type of behavior?
Yes, it's a really truism that we hurt the ones we love, because we're close to them and they know all our foibles, they know what triggers us, and they also know how to, in the UK, we would use the term how to twist the knife. I don't know whether it's the same in the US, sort of essentially keep prodding an area that's uncomfortable or that's sore for the person, a sore subject or a sore issue, and then turning the knife, actually just twisting so that they hurt more. And this is common, when we love someone very dearly and we know them. So this can be in families, this can be in relationships, this can be in friendships, where the two people together are very caring to each other, very loving to each other. There is a very long and established relationship between them. And then there's an upset. And whatever the upset is, the person that is in that very tight relationship will get hurt, because what happens is they have a public persona for everyone else that's not in that very tight and very close relationship. And essentially, I call that relationship somebody that you really care for, you really love, and so you tell them the truth. You don't hide things. You're truthful and honest and genuine with that person. The challenge you've got is that because you're that close, they will then lash out at you rather than the person that's not as close and have that public persona that everything's okay.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And I know myself, when I've seen people lose it in public, I have to say, not me, but you've seen it. We talked about it before. It could be in a grocery store, you're online, at a bank, whatever the case is, and somebody just completely loses it on the person doing their job because they're not getting what they want the way they wanted, or maybe they changed their schedule, their day around so they could go to wherever to get whatever it is done. And they don't realize that the person is following the rules that they've been given, the guidelines that they've been given. And yet we expect people to just change everything for us, and then we lose it. And what happens as a result of that is, if the person, the professional person in this case, if they're not trained on how to deal with it, they then take it and give it to somebody else. Or it gets lodged inside, which comes out later. And I've known people like this through my life. They're very calm. And then all of a sudden, it's like a volcano exploding. They just lose it. It could be months later, just builds and builds and builds. So if we're in a situation in the public, for example, and we're not getting what we thought we were going to get, how can we accept that, be gracious, and be more patient with each other?
What you're talking about is expectations. And when we have expectations of someone, something, or a situation, that puts us into a position of expecting something, and then it falls short of what we thought there might be. And that expectation is upon ourselves rather than on the other person. So we have an expectation that they will do X, Y, and Z. And then you find out they haven't done it. And this is where we can get very upset, very frustrated, even angry. Now, the trouble is, when the person in that situation doesn't really understand what your expectation is, then there is this miscommunication or imbalance in the relationship. And this is where everything comes to head. And this is where the frustration, the argument, and the upset can come up. And so it is important to understand, what else, what do you need? Tell me what's missing. Because if we're not in that dialogue and communicating, you might be communicating with one person who knows, so the boss, for instance, but then the minion or the person that's actually doing the job doesn't know and just falls short of understanding what your expectation is. And when you don't know what you don't know and you don't understand what's required of you, this is where it can get very emotional. So my invitation there is to, before you go straight in, is to explain, explain, okay, then this is my understanding. This is what I thought would happen. So what's going on? What's happened? Why are we here? So that gives the chance then for the other person to explain, well, I didn't know about this and I wasn't aware of that. But, to actually enter into a dialogue rather than losing it. And it's very easy to lose it. We're all human. And I certainly have lost it in many occasions, to the point that, I've said, my words today were, when my solicitor called me, no. And then he carried on speaking. And then I said, way, because I was so shocked. No way was no way was my response. More shock, surprise, stunned rather than angry. But actually what it came down to was a frustration. And it's important when you're in that space to listen, because I could have really, really lost it if I didn't listen to what my solicitor had to say. And he was extraordinarily patient in explaining the different aspects of why we were where we were, which was amazing. It was amazing to me that he had the patience to be able to do that, because it's important to know that some people prefer written communication. And so the fact that he understood that mine was verbal, he called me to explain. And this is the crux of how we can get over that frustration, that misunderstanding, that being really angry, is to listen, to ask for explanation, why, and to listen to the responses back.
I totally agree with you there. I think also something that's coming up for me is when we get news that we're not expecting, you on that call, for example, sometimes what we do is we hear what you were saying, no way. We hear the first part of it, we shut off, no longer listening, and now we're envisioning various scenarios in our minds. And we've gone from here in the conversation to down this road, down that road, wherever it is. And we've totally missed whatever the person said. And maybe what the person has said is not what we want to hear, but at least we would have the facts as they're being presented instead of having checked out for that period of time. And then the other person has to restate whatever it was that they were going to state and deal with your emotions, not you per se, a person.
Yeah, that's a really good summary, because he told me one thing that was terrible, and that's why I said no. And then he kind of carried on, and I said, way. And then I kept listening, because the situation, the issue, actually he resolved, bless him, amazing solicitor. He actually resolved it. And in resolving that, something else came to light, which I had no idea. And then I said to him, you've got to be joking me. So I wasn't nasty. I was kind of, is this for real? You've got to be joking. Like, this is 4:45 on Friday. And they all shut down. What he was saying is, it's okay. You've just got to hold tight. Monday morning, he said, just hold tight for 2 more days. And I said, okay. But, they all behind the scenes, without me understanding or realizing what they were doing, there was lots of calls, there was lots of emails going past different people to resolve not just the one situation I found out about earlier, but actually the situation that arose at 4:30. But the beauty of this is, because of the relationships and the communication, everybody together, without me having the knowledge of it, were dealing with it. Mm-hmm. And that was amazing. And that's what I mean about respect, relationship, trust, that, all these people were working behind the scenes to make it all happen. And unluckily, it's now moved to Monday morning. But, that meant that I had to liaise then with my removal company, who was absolutely amazing. And he said, "Ooh, it's a bit short notice." Ooh, and I'm saying, I know, I'm sorry, but this is what I mean about the honest. There's an integrity in the communication. And, absolutely. Where I'm stuck in between two things, having responsibility, but no control. And this is what happens when we can fall out with people and get very cross and upset, that we have responsibility, but we don't have direct control to be able to deal with something, which is how frustrations, anger, and upset can appear. And so behind the scenes, in between 12:30 and 4:45, there was a lot of conversations and emails, and which I wasn't even aware of that were going on. I knew of one aspect, but this is what I mean about being open, listening, and actually allowing people to handle what they're able to handle from their capacity. And this is the space of being professional. This is the space of listening, being open, because things do happen. We don't know everything until it's divulged. For whatever reasons, some things weren't done, and it's been handled. And so if I'd have got very angry and very cross at my solicitor, then maybe I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in now, and so it's been, I feel like I've developed a new family, of friends, because the one thing, the glue, has been incredible communication, written, verbal, and listening and being open and handling the things that come up. And there are always things that we're not in control about. There are always things that we don't know. And this is where anger, upset, and frustration can come from, not knowing and not knowing what to do. But lots of things got sorted. And so the invitation that I would say here is to be open, to be willing to listen. Even though the first part of it is bad news, it could be that they're giving you the story and the context of where we are now. And it's really important to stay open, listening with both ears to hear what the net result is, because behind the scenes, somebody might be working very hard to resolve a problem that you didn't even realize you had at the point at the beginning of that call.
I love this. This is a major life lesson. And for anyone who's ever moved anywhere, we know how many challenges, and you handle it so professionally. And that's why you're so good at what you do, because it is difficult, especially aside from the emotional element. There's also the physical element. You're packing up, you're moving around, you've changed the way you're living because the living arrangement is not the same, because you're getting ready to leave. And at some point you physically and mentally just get so tired and think, I don't know, can I really do this? I know that I've moved 17 times, I think, since the late 90s. And when I moved into here, long story short, in 2020, the same people who moved me into the place could not get my furniture into the freight elevator to move me out. The same furniture, the same people, the same elevator, it just wouldn't fit. It was unbelievable. So of course, you're paying for the job is supposed to be a certain number of hours. And then not only that, I was moving 2 hours away. And so anyway, by the time they finished us getting here with all this stuff, it was 2:30 in the morning. So they came at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it was 2:30 the next morning. And my family was here. We were all in the driveway trying to move. And they still had to drive an hour and a half to get home. So my point is that sometimes it's out of our control. Like with the furniture, trying to get it in, you got to take a step back and go, okay, the furniture is this big, the elevator is this, like, what's the solution? And I think that's what I would like to ask people to think about. Instead of focusing on your heightened emotions, accept that you are in a certain state and say to yourself, what is the solution? What is the next step that I can take? Maybe it's a very small step, and maybe the step is calming ourselves down. That could be the first step. What are your thoughts?
I couldn't agree with you more. It is to be calm, because when our emotions are up, then we become irrational. And if you're angry and irrational, then nothing gets sorted. So it's very, very important. Yes, there will be frustration. There might even be anger. There might even be tears. But there is a point that somebody else is handling a situation for you. And it's important to be open, to be open for a solution. Because if we're in emotion, then the mind gets cloudy, it becomes very foggy, and you can't think and you can't deal with things. So, the invitation here is to be open to handle it logically, physically, and practically. As I handled it, my emotion was, no way, you've got to be joking, was, sort of as much of the emotion as I got. And I did do some deeper breathing, to calm myself down. And I also have been chanting a mantra which is incredibly good for removing all obstacles since 12:30 this afternoon, all afternoon, just because I'm in practice. And so, I stepped into meditation. But, some people aren't aware of some of these extra things, but I stepped into some practices. And so it is very important to manage your emotions so that you can move through to a practical and logical solution to resolve the issues.
And something I want to add on to that, because I'm in complete agreement, is that the way someone else reacts to our situation, as the world is a stage and people are always watching, doesn't have to be our reaction. And what I mean by this is, Carolyn, you could have called someone, you could have called a family member, you could have called a friend and told them, and all of a sudden you're like this, you're chanting like, what? I can't believe it. Did you do that? Did you? Right? Then they're getting, and you're like, wait a minute, I've got it under control. Now they're losing control because they're upset for you. And they're also thinking, what can they do to help? They really can't do anything. So what is your invitation for people when we have ourselves in check, but the stage around us starts getting involved, yelling from the seats about what it is they think we should be doing?
Well, one of the things I did do is I didn't call my mum until it was all sorted so that she wouldn't be panicking and getting stressed for me, with me, because I had enough to handle. And then I just said to her, we are in a position, everything's going to be sorted first thing Monday morning. So sometimes it's to kind of hold back to manage the other people around you. And then if you have time to explain what's happened so that they're in the picture, and, to keep yourself in a place where you are managing your own emotions from a place of your emotional self, and also keeping yourself in check in terms of the practical and logical things that you can do. Other people around you, yes, they do that because they care. They love you. They care about you. And so it's important, I always feel that I don't want to give other people the stress of a situation. So one of the things that I do generally is I go quiet. I won't say anything until I'm almost there. And then I will come out of the woodwork and say something, and then say, oh, I've had a challenging situation I've been handling, and this has been for a number of months now. But I've been very quiet, because what I want to do is say, hey, this is where I am. And, and it's all wonderful. And I have had some challenging moments. And so I like to do the transformation bit. I like to say, when it's all happened, that actually there's a bit of a story to get there, and it's all happened now, and I'm very happy. And so I do tend to resort to going inward rather than telling people all the challenges, unless I'm really, really close and they can handle them, and they won't, I won't be having to manage their emotions and their frustration and their anger.
I feel like you and I are twins. I already know we're soul sisters, but I feel the same way. We're both single women and both career women. And I have found over the last, I guess through the pandemic, that I don't discuss a lot of things because I know that I don't have all the answers. And I believe in the universe. I believe in God. I believe that things will work themselves out. And by telling one person after another, I think also something that already happened in the past, when you start telling it again, it's like you're reliving the whole situation again. You already dealt with it. Now, why are we talking about it again? So I keep a lot of things to myself so I can figure out how I'm going to get it done. And I don't know if that's good or not, but I've just found that we all have limited time. Our time is a gift. And I don't have any interest in time in spending hours of conversation. Oh, this could happen. I know what could happen. And I'll look it up. I'll Google it. What are the possible things that could happen? So what do you think is the line where someone says, like what I'm saying to you, okay, I'm processing it, I'm looking for solutions, to, okay, you really need to run this by some people?
Well, I had such a situation come up on the weekend where there was an upset that I had to handle. And I got very upset and had to handle it. And essentially, I was so upset. I didn't want to talk to anybody. And then 2 friends reached out to me, and I was actually so upset. I didn't want to explain anything or sort of go through it all, because like you, I believe that if you're focused on the what's not working, then you create more of the what's not working, or more of the problem that you're trying to address. And so I didn't really want to explain, but this very lovely lady kept pushing for answers and kept saying, well, look, I'm your friend, let me help, tell me, talk to me. And in the end, I did tell her. And the consequence of that is I felt more relaxed. I felt much more peaceful having had that conversation. And so even though I was quite tetchy about not wanting to tell her, actually sometimes people reach out, and she had knowledge because she's buying and selling properties, and she was able to relax me in terms of the worries and the concerns that I had. And she reached out at the right time, and she put up with me not wanting to say, to the point that she says, look, I care about you, please tell me, maybe I can help. And she did help. And she did help me feel a lot better about the situation, which is still ongoing. I feel differently about it because what she gave me was a different and a new perspective. And so when you're in something, when you're in a situation that's upsetting, you don't know what to do, you're in the middle of it. And sometimes when you share it with someone, and it's interesting, this aspect of it, when you share it with someone, there is a cliche, a problem shared is a problem halved. But this particular person, she had knowledge about the property market and the kinds of things, the kinds of situations that I was describing that I was going through that were difficult. And she alleviated my concern, my tension, and my worry and my upset in that call. And so sometimes it's actually helpful, even though I didn't really want to do it. I felt better for doing it because I was holding it all in and keeping it all together, because that's what I'm like. That she kept pushing. So I really am grateful to that lovely lady. And then shortly afterwards, I had another phone call from somebody else that was essentially feeling me and wanting to make sure that I was okay. So friends are really, really important. And it's important to understand that there are people there that care enough to be with you in your days that aren't so good, as well as your wonderful days.
I'm so glad that you had those people there for you. That's really important. And I think for others in our audience, we've mentioned this before, but I think especially during times like this with mental health has so much significance that we do self-care and that we are attentive and alert to people that are in our lives, making sure we're paying attention to them and just being open with an open heart and listening, is that you don't have to be alone. There are people who you can reach out to, and it doesn't have to be someone that you don't want to share a confidence with. There are hotlines, there are support groups, there are professionals such as yourself who can assist. I'd like to talk a little bit now about when you're going through a very emotional time, whether you're moving, it's an illness, a loss of someone, some kind of grief that you're dealing with, and the stress builds up. How does it manifest itself physically and emotionally, and how can you help people with it?
Well, it can manifest in the mind. So physically, it can be depression for some people, or sleep problems. So not able to sleep because the mind is constantly whirring around with the problems. It could be that you might suffer with physical ache and pain, like back pain, neck pain, stomach issues, digestive disorders, arthritis. Arthritis comes out of anger, unexpressed anger. And it can also be emotional in terms of, it might be that you're feeling hopeless, or you might be feeling in a place of just like, what's it all for? I've given up. And, so that's the emotional side, the sadness, hopelessness. When somebody's going through a bereavement, there definitely can be a mixture of these things, of disbelief that it's happened, of hopelessness, not being able to solve it because the person's passed over. And it could also be, as dynamic as not sleeping, because the not sleeping means that during your working day and when you're awake, you're busy and distracted. And this is a very common aspect of people handling or not handling stress, that they become very busy and distracted in things in their everyday. But when you go to bed at night, the distractions have all gone. And so then that can create the sleep problems, because the problem is still there. The distractions have gone, but the sleep doesn't happen because you're in that state of the mind constantly whirring around with the problem. How I help people. So what I would do to help you is almost unpick what's not working for you, what you're not handling. And most people usually reach out to me because there's a relationship issue, or there's something that's going wrong with their sleep, or they've got a physical ache and pain, or they've got a troublesome relationship, or they're going through a bereavement and they don't know how to handle their emotions. So there's all sorts of different reasons. There could be that, the person is coping to everybody in the outside, but actually internally they're feeling really awful and not coping. And so it can affect you physically, emotionally, mentally, and also behaviorally. It can come out in the way that you respond and react in your relationships, in your family, your peers, your work colleagues, and also in your intimate relationships. So it'll affect every aspect of your life, even if it's a personal problem or a work problem. You're the same person in both of those aspects. And I would work with you to find the root cause, to identify when this was the earliest interaction in terms of your life. You will feel incredibly relaxed, and more to the point, you'll get an incredible night's sleep after the consultation. And after a free consultation, 30 minutes, either Zoom, Skype, or over the phone if you're camera shy, and you can reach me. If you're international, +44. If you're local, 07523 120 189. Or email me on No More Stress, literally No More Stress, at live.co.uk. And I really look forward to helping you, serving you when in your times of stress, because what I'm showing you is I'm human too, and I have things that I have to handle. And believe you me, I've handled some incredible things in my time and managed to get through the other side, smelling of roses, because I treat people in a human way, because we're all human here, having a human experience.
Thank you so much, Caroline. And I know Monday is going to be your day. It's going to be your day. So before we close out, we have about 2 minutes. When will we be seeing you back here, and also back for A Woman's Prerogative and Talking Heads? What do you think your schedule looks like?
Well,
we'll have to see.
I'm hoping, it should be okay for me to come on Monday. So I should be here for A Woman's Prerogative, unless somebody desperately wants to see me before I leave London. And on Tuesday, I've still, I'm promising my audience, my beautiful followers, and you, that I will be here for Talking Heads. And then I think I have to disappear for a few days to deal with the necessary. And hopefully I should be back again the following Monday. That's the bank holiday Monday for the UK, for A Woman's Prerogative. It just depends, how everything goes. So Monday, Tuesday, I will be back, and I'm looking forward to it, because this is a welcome change for me. This is a breeze, it's a breath of fresh air for me to deliver something like this.
Well, for those of you who are throwing toys out of your pram or out of your stroller, please do reach out to Caroline. That's why she's here. She is a professional therapist. She has clients. She's very busy. She gives up her time to come here to provide education, hope, and inspiration. She is on all the major platforms. And of course, you can watch all of her previous episodes of this show, as well as Talking Heads, A Woman's Prerogative, go over to our YouTube channel, which is USA Global TV and Radio. And on that note, I'm very happy to announce we did hire a second expert on search engine optimization. His name is Ram. He started today. So we will be bringing him forth and having him introduce himself so that we can get to know him. It's very important that you have people who understand search engine optimization. So welcome to the team. All right, we are signing off now. Our next show is coming up. It's presenting Pet Psychic Amina. So thank you again. Thanks, Caroline. Thank you, everyone. Caroline, wishing you lots of love, and I'll be in touch for sure.
I love you. That's
I love
why
you
I'm signing
too.
off with everybody. I love you.
I love you too. Bye.
Good night.